So some things at global config they want you to be able to configure. Host name. If I do, again, the command plus question. Well, here, that leads me to a good thing. So what happens if I spell it wrong and I do a question? You get an error. So this is called a syntax error. So unrecognized command means I'm doing something wrong. So don't keep doing it. Try to adjust. So I do hostname question. It says, okay, well, with the hostname command, you got to provide a word. What is the network name? So in this case, this is a switch. So I might say in my corporate policy that I want to use SW for the start of any switch. I may want to do an R to define a rack. So let's say it's in rack 2. I may want to say that it's on the third device down. I may want to say that it's building 2. So maybe we have some key code that identifies buildings, and then in there you could have room 201 if that's what it is. So a host name needs to do more than just be switch. So you can see when you run this command, because anything that we do inside of global config is real time, the actual host name, which was switch, automatically changes. So we're modifying something called running config. So when a device starts, it discovers that flash iOS. Once the operating system is uncompressed, which you would see by the pound symbols, the next thing it does is it looks into an area called NVRAM, and it says, hey, NVRAM, do you have a config? And so if there's one there, well, it's either NVRAM or flash, but if there's a config file there, the Cisco device is going to find it and it loads it into memory. So NVRAM and that starting config is referred to as a starting or startup configuration, loads into memory. Once the config gets loaded, we're in what we call real-time or running config mode. So that is in RAM. It's actual live memory. If we lose power and we haven't saved our config, the running config is wiped out, and we're going to go back to whatever our previous saved changes were, which is the startup config. So make sure you understand that these are live changes. We're changing RAM. We get done, we got to save them somehow so that if the device loses power or reboots, that it comes back to where we left it. Alright, so after we do a host name, another thing that we might want to do is implement some form of security, because I don't want people just plugging up to my switch and running commands. They should have to go through some level of access. So the way we control access is with usernames and passwords, right? It's a two-factor method. You have to have a username, you have to have a password. So to begin, let's do a single-factor thing. Let's just have a password. So to get into the console port, you plug it in, you press enter, and it gave us the user prompt. I don't want them to be able to do that. So you're going to do line console 0 and press enter. So that says I want to configure the console. So what do I want to configure on it? Well, I want to configure a password. So let's say that we want to use Cisco. Just make sure that you make note of these things. So if I use Cisco lowercase or I use Cisco uppercase, need to know that. If y'all were to put a space and type something else, it's now Cisco space and all the rest of the characters. So don't use spaces. You can use some symbols, some numbers if you want, but whatever it is, make sure you write it down so that later on we don't get locked out. So what other things might we have to do? Oh, we can change login. We can change banners. We just did the password. So for the password to take, we need to do login. So that enables it. So right there. Something else you may want is a banner to display at login. motd-banner. Do you have to do anything else? No. So if you type that command, it says enable the display of a banner. The message of the day is what that's referred to, or banner. When you get done running commands, so you can see we actually changed from global config mode to a line mode or line prompt. There's multiple different line prompts that we're going to review, but console is one of them. So I'm going to do exit. So anytime you type exit, it takes you back a level. Just so you know, if I had done line console 0, I'm like 2 levels up, but I want to get back to the initial enable mode, type end, press enter, and you can see it jumps me back to enable. So there's a little bit difference. Now I got to do configure terminal to get back. So we should have a console password. What about the enable? I don't want people to be able to plug in the console, break that password, get in, and then start configuring. So if you don't want that to take place, you would do enable secret. And so I see people doing searches and questions all the time. Don't do secret password and then, class for your password. It's enable secret and what you want the password to be. So let's say class. And press enter. So my 2 passwords are Cisco. If I scroll up, you should be able to see it. You guys wrote it down, right? With a capital C. And then my enable password or enable secret is class. So just so you know, there's 2 commands. There's an enable password class. So both of these set the enable mode, what would be needed to enter to get into the enable prompt. So just so you know, if you do this enable password class, that password is unencrypted. So if I view the actual configuration files, I can see what that password is. I don't want people seeing my password, so I don't use enable password. I use enable secret, and the difference is that that password is going to be encrypted. And just so you know, enable secret overrides enable password. So if you've done this, and let's say I put a 1 on here, because there's 2 different passwords, this one we would be able to see, but people couldn't use it to get in. They'd have to use the enabled secret class password. So let's do it just to test. So we're going to end, and we're going to end, which takes us back out. Control Shift 6. Try exit. So end gets you back to enable, exit gets you out. So you can see when I press enter, we get asked for a password. So this is the first connection here is the console cable connection. So we used Cisco with a capital C. Type in Cisco. You're not going to see anything typed, so just type it the way you spelled it out and then press enter. The reason being is we don't want to be able to see it because we don't want people looking over our shoulder doing something called shoulder surfing and steal our password. So you can see that, well, now that I've entered that, it gets me into user mode. So before I was just able to press enter and jump straight in. We've made some configurations, so that's not possible anymore. So now I'm going to type enable and press enter. So I'm going to go to admin mode. All right, so we typed 2 enable passwords, one with enable password and one with enable secret. So let's try class with a capital C and a 1. Doesn't work. So let's try the secret, the one that's encrypted. Let's try CLASS. Boom, we're in. Awesome. So we actually have built a simple config just so you guys can see. So there's 2 configs. There's a show startup dash config. So I use the question mark to find it. When I press enter, it's going to display. Oh, there is none. So if this piece of equipment lost power, everything that we've done so far would be gone. There's another one called show running. Again, dash config. You can type tab to complete that, and I press enter. So you're actually seeing we did a host name command. We did enable secret command. That password of class is encrypted. Doesn't look like class to me, right? However, the enable password, which is class 1, is not encrypted. You can actually see the password. Not good, right? That's why we use enable secret. Now the cool thing is, if you've done both enable password and enable secret, two separate things, the secret takes precedence. So this password is not usable to get into the piece of equipment. When you see the more command, you press space to see the rest of the commands. So you can see there's some interface prompts. There's a VLAN prompt. There's a console port that we configured, and there's something called line VTY that we haven't done anything with. But that's a full config. If you want to save your config, there's multiple ways. So I think we can do a right space memory, press enter. See building config. So now if we do show startup, enter, you can see that running config has been saved. So if we lose power now, the switch is going to start up where we left it. Now you can also do copy running and where you want it to go. So if I want it to go from flash from RAM into the flash or NVRAM, I can press enter and it's going to override it. That's the same as the write mem command. The reason copy can be used because we can do a lot more with it. So we can do copy running, and then maybe I want to put it on a server that's running a special application called TFTP. So you can see I can specify machine. I'm going to do Control C to stop that. So Control C. And then we'll pause here and then we'll restart and I'll go through some more config.